Hi guys, it's Blackie. Running a little late tonight. Y'all got to bear with me. It's been a long day. Hope y'all are doing well. And we are a little over a week out from my gathering starting next weekend. Not this weekend, but next weekend is Georgia Bushcraft, and I'm immediately after that. So hope to see some of y'all there. That's the game plan anyway. I went and did some preemptive things today, arranging stuff out there. So been kind of busy getting everything set up. 24 people watching. Awesome. Hunter, good evening, sir. Y'all have to forgive me. I'm a little bit. You ever have one of the nights you just couldn't go to sleep? Last night was that. I have not been to sleep, and I just could not turn my mind off. So I've got a design in my head of a haversack, and it's an old, obsolete design. It's one I had probably about 2010 before I came up with my Blackbird and all, and it's bugging me. And so I guess I'm gonna have to make another prototype to remind myself how I didn't decide to go with it. Randy, good evening. Mike Taylor, doing pretty good. It's actually 73 right now. It's been sunny, warm, nice breeze, really enjoyable. Kind of a little bit of a haze every so often, so it doesn't feel like you're baking to death in the heat out there. Pollen, though, my God, man. I mean, my hat's yellow from pollen. This was a big bloom year for all the pollen, so it's pretty impressive. Hello, Jeff. Hello to Newfoundland, Canada. Rhett, good evening. 2020, good evening. Will, good evening. Gulf Coast Pine Belt, good evening. Oh, dude, this was a record year. You could hose off a deck, and before it even dries, the water turns hazy with new pollen. It's just unbelievable. I went out the other night and just turned on my 1,000 lumen flashlight straight up in the dark, and it looked like I was in a blizzard. There was so much in that light beam, so it's bad. Jack Dorsey, good evening. Chris Bird, good evening. Bear's in the house. Hello to Mrs. Bear. It's been Jeff. It's been really nice thus far. We had the rain the other day. Now it's cleared up. Now we're supposed to get rain this Saturday, but nothing major on the horizon. So far so good. Tim, good evening. Chris, hello there. Happy birthday to Tim Lacey. Thanks for everything you've done in support over the years. Hello, CJ in Dothan, Alabama. Hope you're doing well. Jack, oh, good. You got your packaging. Good. Glad for it. Stacy, hello to West Virginia. Oh, yeah. Cow Tipper, I hear you. There's a lot of places. This is going to be a burning year. I'm going to predict it's going to be a very dry, burning year, even in the South. So, because usually we have a lot more rain than this by this time, but not this time. 2020, raining and just above freezing with a little bit of snow. Yep, winter hadn't left yet up there. Hey, Terry, cool. Hope to see you there. K-Town, good evening. Will, have you shot the Springfield high power clone? I have not. I have shot the TISA clone, which I really like, but I have not got to fire the Springfield clone yet for the high power. Dead Prepper, good evening. K-Town, let's see. Fishing Golf, good evening. Jeff Conley, good evening. Simple Sojourner, good evening to Wisconsin. Yeah, the thing about when you're talking about high powers, and I love Browning high power design, if it's a true copy of a Browning, it don't feed hollow points worth a flip. I mean, you got to do a lot of work on them. But if it's one of the military contract copies like that, like the FIA, not FIA, I forget, I remember the name in a minute. Back in the 90s, there was this big lot came in that was out of Hungary. And it was a military Browning high power copy. It'd feed anything. That's what I had. It would feed hollow points, it'd feed whatever. And my good friend Micah, you know, seeing how well mine shot, he decided, well, I'll go ahead and get an actual Browning. And he shelled out like $700 for that Browning, and it wouldn't fire anything but hollow points, anything but full metal jacket, I meant to say. You put in any kind of hollow point, instant jam, just like that. Mine would feed everything, and mine was a $200 high power clone. So that true Browning, you know, thoroughbred didn't last long, and it got traded off. So every time I say, we're bringing out a copy, which one? The military one or the actual Browning? They're just slight differences in the feed ramp. FEG, thanks, Will. Yeah, the FEG high power. Man, it'd feed anything. Wish I had another one. Slingshot Warrior, good evening. Giuseppe's in the house. Good evening, brother. Yeah, chocolate covered bacon. Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, cool. Yeah, that was the thing. I know Browning themselves finally caved in the late 90s and admitted, yeah, okay, we're actually copying the 1923 design and not the one that by 1935 the military was using around the world, because they had slightly changed the angles of the feed ramp so it would feed other things. Otherwise, it just went straight up when you had a hollow point or whatever. They were betting on that full metal jacket to hit the top of the chamber and chamber. And so they changed the angle just a grunt. And I had a friend that had the high polish Browning that would feed. But it's just one of them things. Every time they say, we're going to copy, which one are you copying? Kenny, good evening. Bob, hello to Southwest Ohio. Hey, Michigan Silverback, good evening. Your boy Forge, hello there. Gordon, where can you get a nipple wrench for your 51 Navy? The best thing to do is just make one, to be honest, because everyone I've ever got from even the big names doesn't work worth a flip. And it is a, pardon me while I use the glasses and not the false. I went and got a 5mm. That is a 5mm deep well socket. I got it from like the auto parts place. You go in and buy just a socket. And I put it on a nut driver. Now, what I did was I took a Dremel tool and I cut a notch across that it will now work as a nipple wrench, because they're hollow, right? Because it's a deep well socket. And I just went back and forth with that Dremel cutting wheel until I made it where I could fit a nipple snugly in there. That's good hard chromium. That ain't gonna strip out, and you can actually bear down on it and break it loose. That's what I make. I tell people, just make your own. By far, it's better. I have paid $20 before for what was supposed to be the one, and it would roll like it was made out of peanut butter, you know. And so, in fact, I called up Dixie Gunworks one time and said, I'm not looking for something for a case set. I'm looking for an actual tool, you know. Oh, there's a such and such made by such. They're $45 a piece. And I shelled out the money, and I had a 1860 Army with a broke nipple. And so I went to replace it. with a new one. I chucked it up in a drill press so I could put pressure onto it and turn it, with a pull lever by hand. Stripped right out. It was like it was made out of rubber, and so I learned to make my own. So that's what my recommendation is. Eric, glad you did. The name of the rucksack is the Nighthawk, but thank you very much. John Laddermilk, good evening, brother. Are you coming to the gathering, John? Mopar, good evening. Gerald, well, hello to New Jersey. Kodak, good evening. Big E, good evening. Marlboro, good evening. Jeff Conley, would you be willing to do a whole day in-person class on knife sharpening? Yeah. I can bring out all my gear and we can walk through it step by step. Okay, Gordon, be safe. Okay, Jeff, I recently ordered my first knife in AEBL. Do you have any tips on blade maintenance and the like? I don't want to mess it up. Okay. If it comes sharp and you're happy with the sharpness, don't worry about sharpening after that. Just hone it. Put it up there on a hard stone and do real light. If you're going to use a diamond sharpener, that's fine. Do nice and gentle. What I like to do is to sit this down on a table like that, put the edge onto it, and like I said, make sure the shadow, and just gently pull it. It won't take many strokes on a diamond, and it'd be like a razor again. Don't automatically go to thinking sharpening. Just if it starts to get in a little tougher to cut, which I'm gonna tell you, properly done AEBL, if it's done by William, it don't get dull. I mean, you're gonna be amazed how long you're cutting before you ever even notice that it feels like it's getting a little bit more effort. In which case, like 10 strokes on the side and it's right back. Just stay with the angle it is. Don't start horsing it around. Stay with the angle and it'll last you the rest of your life. I'm super pleased with everyone I've ever had. Oh yeah, Marlboro. Up there, you're going to need a little bit more horsepower. You got big things up there with claws. Oh, cool. You're going to the Woolly Swamp with the North Carolina hammock hangers. Cool. Hope you have a great time. Jake, hello to Nebraska. Steele, hello there. Brett, good evening. Yeah, John, I hear you. A couple of people are going to be showing up during the next week, where we don't start till the week after. But a couple people have done said, I'm going to drop in and just hang around camp for a little bit. I'm like, okay, go ahead. I will be there definitely at lunch on Monday. I may hop out earlier, depending who all's there. We're going to talk about maybe bringing the firewood out like on Sunday or something. But Bear's going to be pretty busy, but me and him's going to work out a schedule to get the firewood out there. And I can tell, you can tell I ate lunch. Look at there. So barbecue, it was good. But then I'll be out there for the duration. And I talked to the ladies at the surplus store. They will be open on Saturday for those of you that are coming in late. So we will go during the week. If a group wants to go, we'll go. And then we will go on Saturday for any stragglers that come in. So we will be going to the surplus store. Jack Doris, Blackie, what's a good skinner that is a folder? Well, okay, I'm old school, and I'm going to tell you, I am very partial to the big two-blade Stockmans, two-blade trappers, I should say. That blade right there is my favorite skinning blade, because that back edge, you can bear down and just ride it like a zipper on the meat. And then you got the clip point for piercing and cutting. I like just a plain 2-blade folder is what I do. I'm old school, but any of the good quality, and I like about that size, that 4-inch size. I don't like that little short one. That's better if you're doing a little bit of trout and things, maybe. But if you're going to be cleaning like a big animal, like a deer or something like that is my preference. And God knows the amount of deer I've cleaned with a pocket knife before, so, and other large animals. Todd Gibson, brother. It will be starting on April the 7th, going through the 13th, brother. Gulf Coast. Blackie, do you know if it was common for Confederate soldiers to walk home after the end of the war between the states? Yes. Especially those who were paroled out. You got to remember, like, for example, Lee's Army, when it surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse, you're kind of like on an honor system. Okay. Everybody listed their name down and everything. They stacked arms. They did everything. And then they went home. You know, they walked back home. There was some trains and things that they would transport, but nothing like we saw at the end of World War II, where the war is over now, we got to get our troops home. Since the Confederacy had lost, there were no funds, and the Union soldiers were trying to get home, and so they had priority on the river boats and etc. And plus the fact that the Confederate troops didn't have any money. They had been paid when they were paid in Confederate coin, and that was useless now. And so they didn't have anything to exchange other than labor. And so a lot of guys just had to walk home, you know, or come up with some way to get home. As a family legend talks about my family, about a individual that he was up in Virginia when the war ended, and that he found a Yankee horse that was homesick for Alabama. And he came back home on a Yankee horse. Oh, cool, Jerry. Yeah, that's cool. Jerry, what styles of barbecue does Alabama do? There's a white barbecue sauce that's known as Alabama barbecue. I am partial to red sauces, and I like Carolina vinegar base myself. But there are multiple, you know, like Memphis type, Nashville type, Louisiana type. There's 8 or 10, depends on where you're going. There was a place down there in Dothan that they had 21 different kinds of barbecue sauces. And so they had the meat, and you could pick what sauce it was. And these were legit sauces. This guy was a connoisseur of barbecue sauces. And so when he said Carolina vinegar base, he meant it. When he said mustard base Carolina, he meant it. But down here, we predominantly use is red sauce. And sometimes you'll see, you know, Carolina. Sometimes you'll see even mustard base. But it just depends on where you're going. What's a good bear defense round in 3.57? 158 grain semi-wad cutter would be 158 grain semi-jacketed hollow point would be my choice. It has a good core to penetrate deep. You've got to hit and stop now. Therefore, if any kind of headshot on the bear, it'll do maximum expansion and trauma. But if it's a body hit, you've got to penetrate way in there, depending on what you're shooting. And so that would be my choice. And there have been quite a few bears and big animals taken with 357, especially back in the 70s when that was kind of the heyday. So it can be a very effective. Yes, Todd Gibson, that's correct. April 7th to the 13th. Hope to see you there. William's coming. Andy Knight, hello to South Georgia. Gray Wolf, yep. Cleaned a deer with a 30-30 shell pounded flat on rock. I've heard about people using broken glass before because that's the only thing they had available that was sharp enough. Jack, no problem. Patriot Preacher, correct. Buffalo boar is a very good source for that. Paladin, hello to Northeast Florida. Jojo, good evening. Oh, cool, Stacy. Yeah. Terry of the Light. Has anyone noticed cap jams and erosion in the hand area? There's usually a little bit of pitting around the hand area for the flash coming up and over and down. It'll kind of flash down in there, because remember, straight up's where the cap is, and it flashes down at an angle. So that can be part of it. Yeah, Todd Gibson, that's correct. Randy's coming. So we're going to have William, going to have Randy. Frisbee's going to be there. Chris is going to be there. It's going to be a good gathering. And there's a lot of new people that I met down in Florida at the Rewild. They said they're coming to it. So we're probably going to see a lot of new faces. Jason, hello to Virginia. Tim Pierce, I hear you. Sorry to hear the little ones being a little bit fussy. Randy, good evening. Common Sense Karen, hello. Talking about the fussy one, I'll tell you something that we do in our family. When they get to that age where they just don't want to lay down, we'd do sleepy bear patrol. And we'd pick them up, we'd put them on our shoulder, and we'd start walking in a perimeter, like inside the house, go out of this room, that room, and just start going in a circle. And we'd keep talking to them the whole time. And when they start to doze off, we'd pump them on the butt a little bit. Go, no, wake up. We're on sleepy bear patrol. Come on, soldier, we are on patrol. We do not go to sleep on patrol. We keep going. And if they cried a little bit, that's good. Keep singing. Keep the boogeyman away. Come on, keep singing. And you try to keep them awake. And usually what happens after 20, 30 minutes of this, they're like, and they're gone, and you're tapping them on the butt going, wake up. And you can't wake them up. They give up. Forget it. And that's when you go in there and put them on the bed. They're out. You start doing that, and real quick, it ain't no problem putting the kid down. They're like, yeah, right, sleepy bear patrol. Hook them over. So here we go. And they I have done that a lot of times, but friends of mine had little ones. They just couldn't get them laid down. I said, I'll come over and we'll do sleepy bear patrol. And it just, if you flip the script, it's easy for you to say, be quiet, go to sleep. And they want to fight. No, I don't want to do it. If you flip the script and go, stay awake, come on, stay awake, they'll start fighting to go to sleep. It works. Terry the Light, is it true they would notch grips and frames for kills in the Wild West? Some did. Bloody Bill Anderson had a knotted leather cord that he wore around his neck. Every time he killed a Yankee, he would put a knot in the cord. And so it depended on the person, and etc. Well, Jeff, I'm sorry you're not going to be able to make it this year. Hopefully you'll get better and you'll be able to. I look forward to it. Yeah, John, you need to come. You want to come a little bit early and pick out your spot. Good idea. Correct. Yeah, Marlboro. A lot of times it was, that never made sense to me. In the old West movies, look how bad he is. He's got that, and etc. Notches on his gun. You walk into town not looking for trouble, and the local law says you got 10 notches on your gun. You just screaming for trouble. You want to be nobody. And we see that in actual history of where, like, John Wesley Hardin, he's shot him up out west. He's been on these cattle drives. He's got a big reputation. He's gone nose to nose with Wild Bill Hickok. Everybody knows about, Hardin. Where did he run to hide? Alabama. He got caught in Pensacola, Florida, riding a train going back out. You know, they would come back east. You didn't want anything to identify you, and you sure didn't want notches on a gun or anything. I've even heard the story about a guy that he would get a tattoo on his hand every time he killed a man. You know, that's like gangland today, where they'll get a tear and tattoos in prison and stuff like that. That may be cool in there, but when you come back out, it makes it very hard for you to kind of blend back in. So I think putting notches on a gun are a lot like that. It just asks for trouble. Bob, my wife and I are hoping you arrive on Friday or Saturday. Stranger things been known to happen, but I know I'll be out there definitely Monday. I may pop in earlier once people start showing up, and just come out and check out and, you know, spend the day. But I got to get my stuff lined up so I can be out there a whole week, you know. But I wouldn't be surprised if I didn't just drop in for a couple hours here or there, especially during the day. Yes, Paladin, there'll be plenty of spots. Yeah, bring your e-bike. That'd be great. Charles Martin, doing well. How about you? Rhymes with orange. The only word in the English language that comes close is door hinge. And why is that? We changed the pronunciation. Originally, it was orange. And there was morange, orange, homage. They all rhymed. But when the English language changed the way we vocalize it, orange became a dead end. There wasn't nothing in the English language that would match it. A veritable storehouse of useless information. Cherokee, I thank you very much. I appreciate you enjoyed the videos. Ground Fog, good evening. Charles Martin, okay. Glad your day's over and you made it home safe. Okay, Justin, get safe, brother. Get well. 58 video is the best cleaning video. Glad you enjoyed it. The 58 is a really good, and a lot of people, when they say, what should my first gun be? And I tell them, if you've got no background in any kind of muzzleloading gun or whatever, get a 58. Because the shape, the frame, the sights are so similar to a fixed-sided single action or something like that you may have shot. And it's easy to drop the cylinder out and etc. The only little thing in that design is when you're breaking it apart and you slide it down, you got to take out that itty bitty screw that holds the hand of the hammer. That's the thing you got to be fully focused and make sure you're not over big carpet or something. So if you drop it, it's gone. That's the one thing. Everything else is fairly large and robust and easy to work with. But that itty bitty screw is the tough part on a 58. Rhymes with orange. No, actually, about 1972, on a TV show, there was someone whose last name was Orange, and in the TV show, a cop type drama, there was this serial killer who was killing people, you know, that were from this particular era. And the last one, guy named Orange, he never went after. And he always wrote a poem of the one he'd killed and to taunt the police. And when they finally caught him, it's, why didn't you kill him? He said, nothing rhymes with orange. And so what saved his life was his last name was Orange. And I remembered that all the way from there. Hey, good evening, Roger. Hey, brother, how you doing? Still doing the drone stuff, man. You're awesome. Anytime you want to camp, brother, I'm here. Paladin, actually really good self-service out there. Gabe, sure, come on. Come out. That's what we're doing at my gathering. It's just a big camp out. Come on. Stacy's Parts, thank you very much. Charles Martin, glad to do it, brother. Yes. Like keeping the wheel on the hammer. Exactly. Yeah, don't take it off. As long as it free flows, just soak it, clean it good, and go on. If it ever starts getting crusty, then you got to do something. But I prefer to soak it in penetrating oil. If that thing ever starts seizing up, just soak it in penetrating oil and see if you can get it back. But to their credit, they back about the early 80s, they shifted over to really a hardened piece, and it rarely gets out of really good service. So yeah, correct. It had that little bitty hammer wheel. Yes. Tim Pierce. Well, tell you what, come to the gathering. Anything of mine that I've got with me, like I'll of course have my haversack and all that stuff. And you want to sit down and talk about it, we'll hit the dirt, man. I'll grab it. You know, when we go to the surplus place, if you want to buy some paracord and us sit there together and we'll make you up a cordage set, we'll do it. You know, I'll walk you through everything I do with cordage sets and etc. Glad to do it. John Loudermilk. Useless information is knowing the name of the lint in your belly button. It's called NAR. Oh, cool. Oh, yeah, Ryan's Orange. Yeah, good way to do it. Jeff Conley. The reason is English had a big change back in the day. If you came up like we did whenever we had to be in school, you had to read the Canterbury Tales and you had to read Shakespeare, right? Those two authors are less than 100 years apart. And yet, if you put the two of those authors in the same room, they probably couldn't have understood each other because the one, Chaucer, is pronouncing vowels like the French do because of the Norman conquest. And so they're pronouncing things as the French did. And Shakespeare is pronouncing it like the English and Germans did. And so that was the change. And so it's like, you know, Gallagher did the thing about one, O-N-E, one. What's the W sound from? It should be W-O-N. No, that's different. O-N-E. Two, T-O. No, there's a W in it. T-W-O. The W is silent. It's because in Old English, when we pronounced it like French, it was wa, trois, try. 1, 2, 3. Wa, trois, try. And so when we changed the vowels, we didn't change the spelling. And so that's reason some things don't say orange was orange, you know. And so there were things. Charles Martin, thank you. Will a Dragoon shoot through a 53 Chevy? Well, the 53 Chevy is an all steel body. I'm very confident it will penetrate the outer wall. I'm 85% confident it would still penetrate the inner wall. I do not think it would be able to penetrate the far wall. It may go through the other door, but not out the other skin, because that would be defeating about 1/4 inch of mild steel. And that ball would deform on each one and become less and less penetrative. So in my opinion, I do not believe it would penetrate all the way through a 50-something Chevy for that reason. Yeah, I like your little pocket saw. I saw one similar on Dave's video, and their store, I think it's perfect for cutting out knife. Yes, those look really good. Nice, aggressive little teeth. A really good price. I hadn't got to get my hands on one of those yet, but it looks like a great little small pocket saw. and would probably be a very good investment to throw into a haversack. I'm going to see about possibly getting a hold of one of those just for that. I use my Swiss Army saw, which is a very good saw, but at the same time, it's attached to a much more expensive knife. If I could pick up one of them little cheap saws like that for that little notch saw, hey, that might be a way to go. Jerry, I wish I could make it so we could talk hammock and bedrolls because I'd love to pick brain. Feel free to ask questions anytime, bro. I'll tell you everything I know. Chaucer, yeah, forsooth, correct. John, so far, I have only seen one or two mosquitoes. There has not been that huge bloom. I'm actually thinking the blizzard of 25, where we had 10 inches of snow down here, may have knocked them down a little bit. Tim Pierce, thank you very much. And like I said, I expect them by now, they should be by the billions. And I have only seen one. And that was the night I was sitting on the front porch talking to a friend of mine on the phone. And it was dusky dark. And I saw one come in and land on my arm. So thus far, we're doing good. But of course, bring you some bug spray. When you come into camp in the South, bring some fire ant killer, bring bug spray. And you might want to bring, depending if you're coming from way up north, bring something for sunburn because we're already hitting high indexes down here, and you can get a burn down here now if you're in the sun long enough. Bang, bang. Good evening. I'm doing pretty good. Hanging in there. John Kennedy, yeah. Actually, I heard about that. I had a friend of mine in Kentucky was telling me that he had ticks. That he was in the yard working on a gate, and he said he was standing around barefooted, and he said he felt something crawl between his toes and looked down. And he had a tick. So I wouldn't think they'd be out this early, but okay. Yeah, I want to try that little saw. Yes, Bear. Dakota is a good source for bedroll information. His primary camping is in a bedroll. So yeah, Tony, you would think up north, but it's actually a different mosquito. And of course, up in Canada and northern tiers, y'all got them muskegs and stuff like that, and that mosquito just hatches out by the trillions because your warm season is such a short. He's got to get out and get aggressive and get gone now because otherwise everything turns too cool. But our mosquitoes down here are not nearly as cold adaptive. And so you can knock them back a little bit. They will come back. Don't worry. They're not going extinct. But you can knock them back. And I'm wondering if that snow was enough to knock them down a little bit this time. Because I fully expect by this time, as warm as it's been, you get a week or two of 80-something degrees, you should be able to go out and you can't hold your arm out and count to 10. You ain't got at least a dozen mosquitoes lighting on you. But thus far, we haven't had it. So. Oh, good. Bang, bang. Awesome. Now, Bang Bang, is that your business? Is Bang Bang Bushcraft? That if somebody wanted one of those sheaths, is that where they would go? Hold on. I'll show you. Pardon. Traditional type copper sheath. Good heavy. Well, Nice belt tagged in. It's got the proper twist so that it'll ride up our Cheyenne style, or you can carry it vertical. I like that. Now, the knife I'm carrying in it is the Pathfinder Buffalo Skinner. It's just what I had that fit, and it fits it like a glove. So, you know, back up one. Y'all done took off. Bang Bang Bushcraft is who sent me this. I really like it. I really, really do. Back in my rendezvous days, you saw a lot of this copper type stuff, copper sheath. And I had one made out of moose, and it had a Russell camp knife in it, Green River camp knife, and that was one of my early rendezvous knives. Loved the sheath, liked the knife. It was really, really good. And I couldn't get rid of the knife because I really liked the sheath for it. But when I finally had to part ways with it, first thing somebody said was, when you want to get rid of that knife, I want it, because they wanted the sheath off of it, actually. So really like it. Yeah, John Loudermilk. I had flashbacks to Camp Lejeune. I hear you. Sand fleas. I prefer a 10 by 10 tarp. Yeah, for ground pounding, I can get away with a 9 by 9 or an 8 by 8. But to be honest, 10 by 10, especially if it's not very bulky, I prefer the 10 by 10, because where I'm at, you can get such storms roll off the Gulf where it's wind and, it's like hurricane force for 25 minutes, where it's 40, 50, 60 mile an hour wind. It's just bucketing down, And so you got to have something that you can maneuver around up under it to get away from blowing in around the sides. And so I prefer a 10 by 10 when it's fitting the proper weight and size constraints. Andrew Kelso, good evening. All right, cool. Yeah, Bang Bang Bushcraft. Let me write that down, because I'm going to give you a plug in a video on it. And if you would, Bang Bang, put your contact down in here, where somebody could contact you. So when I do the video talking about it, if somebody wants to talk to you about one, they can go to you. Okay, catching up. James Singer, they started hatching up in Anniston. My wife is one of them that I can be sitting there wearing nothing but a pair of shorts, swim trunks, and I got one mosquito. She's 5 feet to the right of me. She's under a blanket, and there's a holding pattern waiting to get into the circle coming around her. It was like a cloud. She's just sweet. Mosquitoes love her, and they don't care too much about me. So you can change your pH of your blood. And I tell people that if you'll start taking B12, it will change the pH of your blood. And when that mosquito comes up and does that, they're trying to smell the pH of your blood. It's a female. She's going to bite you, bring the blood into herself. That's how she's going to incubate her babies and feed her babies. And if your pH is too high or too low, it'll kill her babies, so she won't bite you. You can't stop them from coming to you, but you get them where they don't want to bite you. You smell bad to them. Same thing for ticks, anything else. If you don't have a good pH, they don't want to bite you because you taste bad. So, Terry Blackie, have you ever tried any of the old timer bushcraft knives? I have not tried a bushcraft knife from them, but I have done a lot with old timer pocket knives. Okay, cool. Yeah, but Bang Bang Bushcraft is where you can contact me on Facebook, Instagram. Is it bangbangbushcraft.com? Contact you in what medium? 10x10 oilcloth. Those are nice. Oh, yeah, Bruce. 9 inches of snow in Pensacola. Stayed on the ground for 3.5 days. Wow. Haven't seen that many mosquitoes yet. Good. But 112, good evening to Rome, Georgia. Yep, sweet blood. Them mosquitoes love you. Ronald Hayes, Blackie, have you got a turkey yet? I haven't gone this year. I've been busy doing all kinds of other stuff, but I have it on good authority that Bear may be going turkey hunting here pretty soon. Wow, an original cap art was posted on eBay for $9 grand. I can believe it. Especially with the cap art days up there in the Carolinas and all, it is really drove in a lot of the collectability of a lot of cap art stuff. Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing about it is the our winters down here, it's like you just turn off a switch. This is not an exaggeration, guys. We go from heater to air conditioner in a day, where the last 5 or 6 days, the highs have been 45, and the nighttime lows are maybe in the 20s. And then that morning, it's 35. By sundown, it's 75. And that overnight low is 65. Next day, it's 82. And you're having to turn on the air because you're so used to daytime highs in the low 60s, and suddenly it's 25 degrees hotter, and you're going, you're burning up. And so you got to turn on the air and flip it in the fall. We're the same thing. We're so used to heat that when the cold rolls in, we go from air conditioner to heater usually within 24 hours. Ooh, authenticated by Western North Carolina. Yeah. That would be one heck of a find. Yeah, Charles Martin, we have it like that. 30 in the morning, and by 12, it's 80 degrees. And how do you dress? If you're leaving the house going to work or going out, do you dress for the 89 degrees or do you dress for the 32 degrees? That always got me in spring, in the spring and the fall when we would have those, because I'd carry a light clothing and a sleeping bag. That way I'd sleep warm. I could be a little cool during the day. I'd be up, moving. So if it was a little bit cool, I'd warm up. But at night, I wanted to stay warm. And then flip it later in the year, I'd be toting a poncho liner or less. I mean, I have taken a bed sheet before and just folded it in half and sewed it. So use it as like a top cover, because that's all I needed, because the nighttime lows were going to be like 72, 73. And so therefore it's just something to put over me to keep mosquitoes off of me. So. Exactly. You're exactly right. Layers. You got to start with layers and drop layers off. Brothers of Bushcraft knife. I have seen it, but honestly, I have not held one, so I can't speak to it. It looks to be a good, competent design, right size, right thickness, length of handle, things like that. But I can't attest to it. Haven't had one in my hand and haven't used one, so I can't really tell you about it. I wish I could, but that one time years ago, I talked to William, and I had talked about going to Smoky Mountain Knife Works one day and just spending when they're having one of their big events, go up there and just go and look at knives of all these makers and everything that we ain't never had a chance to actually hold the knife and take a look at. Of course, I ain't gonna let you chop down a pine tree with it, but you know what I mean. And at least get a lot of these names and stuff that are coming up that I've never got to hold one yet. Yeah, Bear saying PSA, bring a light jacket to the gathering. Always come prepared. We always have a cold snap somewhere in the beginning of April. Always. Now, when I'm saying cold snap, I mean the nights may get down to the 50s, maybe upper 40s. You know, the daytime high should be somewhere in the 60s and low 80s, 60s to low 80s, somewhere in there. But y'all that have been coming to my gatherings for years, remember one year we had a gathering and it was cold the whole time. Everything, the daytime highs were in the 40s. I missed it. I missed the date, and it was just cool and drizzly and nasty. So I've been lucky thus far. So far, that's the only time I've really missed it bad, where it wasn't, you know, comfortable, so to speak. Terry, actually, that Kephart himself owned, yeah, there were two. But the guy that made the knife for Kephart, he made a couple of more. And so it's not like a stock model of his, but as I understand it, the guy who actually made the knives for Kephart actually made a couple of more. And so that's what he's talking about. When they found one was authenticated, this is basically identical to the same knife. It just wasn't owned by Kephart, but it's one of those. That's what he's talking about. That's what makes it so expensive, because it was by that maker from that time, and it wasn't a mass-produced knife, and he really didn't make that many of them total. So, right. Um, I remember back in the 90s, there was talking about rare things. There was a guy in Kansas that had bought a old homestead and was tearing it down for wood, tearing down the old barn, tearing down the old house, and him and his son were using wrecking bars to try to save the boards, because they had plans to use it for an extension on his house, the lumber. And there was an old fallen in smokehouse over on the side. And he had remembered when he was young that in the smokehouse, a lot of times they would leave an old muzzleloader gun or just an old gun that didn't matter so much in there. And that was for shooting the hogs or whatever in the smokehouse. And so he went over and was investigating it, and he had to pry the door open where the building had kind of collapsed. And he got the door busted open, and when he reached up over the door, he hit something that was wrapped up, and he pulls out, and it's this big old oily rag, and inside of it was wax paper, and inside of that was a 7.5-inch barrel Colt single action Army military issue. Well, he was all excited about it, and then he saw serial number 1. He thought, they can't be. No. Well, he finally got it to appraiser. The appraiser looked at it. They knew what they were looking at. They went through it through a fine-tooth comb and had the marks where it's supposed to have the marks. And this has got to be somebody trying to fake something. So they contacted Colt, and Colt looked at it, and they finally said, we cannot disprove nor prove that this is out of that very first shipment that went to the cavalry, but this is exactly down to the metal of the mainspring and everything else. This is exactly, the depth of the screw holes and everything of what it was. And so they certified it as number 1. It's in the Smithsonian now. The guy sold it for like $3 million, but it was in somebody's ancestor had been in the cavalry and came home with it. So you never know what you're going to find when you start looking around. Cloister Brothers. Okay. Coalescer? Colesser Brothers. There's a word that'd be very dangerous on a Scrabble board. IR bloopers reported. Awesome. Buckeye Bushcraft, good evening. Hope you're doing well. You know, you never know what's going to be collectible. And what you think will be down the line a good investment, etc., may not be. And then it's the oddball stuff, you know. I remember back in the early 90s, somebody was saying, you know, a collector car, because that's when the muscle cars were coming back, where they had been the car, and they became the kid car, the junk car, because they were wore out. And now they were being brought back and restored, and you started seeing a lot of the old muscle cars showing up. And somebody was saying, what would be a good car for an investment to take and put up? And I said, that's easy, a Yugo. And they laughed at me and said, God, what a piece of junk. I said, that's the point. It's almost an all plastic car. They're so crappily made. If you have a fully functional and clean one and put it up 30 years from now, it'd probably be as rare as hen's teeth and be very collectible. And I saw a thing pop up, I think last year at some car show out west, and this guy had an original low mileage Yugo, and it was being hailed as, you know, a great collectible because they just don't exist anymore. They're all got scrapped, you know, and so that made it rare and therefore valuable. It itself was not valuable. Its rarity made it valuable. And who knows, you know, 100 years from now, they may be talking about, you know, one of Canterbury's knives, or maybe one of Williams knives, or something like it would be the big collectible. Who knows? You know, we're reading and talking about stuff like Nesmunk and Kephart and all of this, and they're from over a century ago now. They were in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So we're talking about 125 years ago. And we're excited about, we found one of the knives that was in that list. I mean, somebody's haversack, somebody's backpack, who knows what will be collectible to them if they're still into bushcraft and woodscraft 150 years from now, looking back at our stuff. Who knows what'll be the thing, you know. Yep, full-size Joe, G.I. Joe action figures. Remember the aircraft carrier? About 71, 72, that like 7-foot long aircraft carrier you could get with G.I. Joe? You go or you don't go. And the 4-door is called the We Go. Sanford Brown, hello there. Tony York, how you doing? Yeah, Bruce, the NASCAR diecast from the 90s, at the time they thought, well, NASCAR was so huge in the 90s, and you thought, man, these are going to be collectible. You never know. You just never know. Hey, Buckeye Bushcraft, you got a good channel. You know, big ain't everything. Being good, being small and good is just as good as being big and not. So therefore, keep doing what you're doing. Hunter, do you think our Alice packs will last another 100 years? They might have a chance, you know. I recently got rid of it in the last year. I had a canvas rucksack that came out of Switzerland and was marked 1921. Okay. Flat, leather straps, etc. Metal frame in it. 1921. I got it in the late 90s, and I used it as a camping rucksack for a couple of years before I moved on to something else. And I still had it in my collection. That bag's 100 years old, and when I handed it away to the next person, it needed to replace the leather, 2 pieces of leather. Besides that, it was still perfectly functional today after 100 years of use. So you never know what's going to be the stuff that's just like, just keeps going. Oh yeah, evil, yeah, like Evil Knievel, Evil Genevo, yeah. Sure, Buckeye. Wish you the best, bro. Right. You know, you collect the old kerosene lanterns. Those Aladdin lamps ain't cheap, you know, and the Amish and Lehman's has kept so much of that stuff up and still in production because they still use it. And those old kerosene lamps, originals, can be hundreds of dollars, you know, for a lamp that was probably hung in a barn for most of its life. So, compass collector, I hear you. I had a friend one time that he wanted to collect a compass, like an issue compass, for every army of World War II. And so he had a big display case, and like the Germans and the British, those were easy. Mexican, there was actually one Mexican detachment that flew fighter aircraft. They're never in combat. They had a fighter aircraft thing they sent to Africa for something. A compass that, you know, and that was the rarest ones. These little bitty countries that participated on the periphery of it, like, you know, Paraguay and things like that. And so he was still trying to collect one of every one of their compasses, and that was his thing. He said it like 121 compasses would be the complete collection of one compass that you would have used in the military between 1940 and 1945 in some military around the world. So Charles Martin, my I've got three, but my old green one that I've wore the longest, it's from like 1966, and so it's over 50 years old. It's pushing 60. You know, next year will make it 60 years. What would it be? Let's see. 76, 86, 96, 2006, 2016, 2026 will make it 60 years old. And I'm still wearing it as a field jacket. It's hanging up right over there. You know, still works. So, yeah, Michigan Silverback. I mean, Vietnam reenacting is a thing now. And I picked up a lot of that stuff as surplus for pennies on the dollar back in the 70s when I was getting into camping and stuff. And a good friend of mine, Hayden, came over with Fox, which is Bear's son. And I opened up a wall locker I got, and I pulled out a duffel bag that was just full of old um, Vietnam era harnesses and ammo things and carriers and compass pouches and Kaminga. I mean, the compass they had back then, and all of this various stuff. And I thought he was going to just have a heart attack right there because he does Vietnam reenacting. And here was original stuff that would fit him that still worked, you know. So I had ponchos, I had everything. We made a deal, and so right now he's the best dressed in the reenactment group. I understand. Andrew, yes, Lyman is still in business, and you can get die sets for them. Cool. Jerry, I hear you. Tony York, I hear you. And that's not a bad way to be. Okay, yes, please do that, Bang Bang. Just email me on the Scalp Hunter address, which is down in the description box, just in case. Cool, a Sunto tandem. Terry, all right, cool. Before you go and just hand that away, always go look on eBay. You'd be amazed what original M65s are going for. You know, just because you've outgrown it don't mean you've outgrown money. And somebody that'll buy it will love it because they're willing to shell out money for it. And then you can go get one of the replicas. They make them up to 5X. And Bill Droom bought I think a 4X at the surplus place we go to. They can get them. And he got the 4X and he said it was too big and he needed a 3X. So they make them. Okay. Tim Pierce, I do. The USGI, this type stuff will probably be at one point. You don't know. The desert camo that we first started the Desert War with that had black in it. And we only had that for like a year or two, and then they changed it and went to the one without black in it. That camo is now collectible and rare. The woodland, like you see me wearing a lot all the time, I picked those up surplus because they were dirt cheap. You know, that M81 camo has started to become kind of pricey now because you got to remember, they've stopped wearing that camo 30, 40 years ago. And so therefore, you know, you never know what's going to be. What was just everywhere. Remember when the Swiss camouflage, that wild pattern was everywhere. There were ponchos, there was outfits, there was everything. And everybody went, God, that's ugly. I don't want it. Now try to find it. You know, those big old heavy canvas rucksacks that they call salt and pepper. They're kind of that grayish color that came out of Switzerland. They had leather harnesses and straps. Those were $20 a piece. I think they're $300 now. So you never know what's going to become collectible. Yeah, that's it, Jerry. When you find an original one that's an extra large, they are wore out because they didn't make many of them because the average guy toting a pack wasn't that big. And like I said, about the only thing in active service that wore extra large or 2X was probably a Navy cook because they were on ship. They didn't have to walk a lot, so they could have a bigger jacket, you know. And but at the same time, you know, most guys toting a pack, you didn't have many guys toting pack that were over 250 pounds back in them days. Buckeye, I'll keep an eye out. If I stumble across an odd compass or something that seems to be in good shape, I'll get a hold of you because I do stumble upon alpenflies. Thank you, Jeff. I do stumble ever so often at old antique stores and things. I'll look up and somebody will have old World War compasses. Last year, they was in a little bitty old small mom and pop tea shop. You know, they got little antiques and they got little crafts and they had little cookies and tea, and you know, and lattes and things. And I happened to walk through, and I looked down, and she had it listed as pocket watch, and it was brass. And I looked at it and said, that is not a pocket watch. That's a World War I officer's compass. And I asked to see it, and she didn't know how to open it. You know, you push the stem and unlock it. She was afraid to break it. Opened up, and it was the compass, and it was in a really good shape. And when I looked on the back of it, it was inscribed with a lieutenant such and such. I want to say it was March 2018, 1918 on the back of it. Everybody's heirloom. There was a World War I officer's compass, and they wanted $25 for it until I told her what it was, and it became a lot more expensive. So, okay, Michigan Silverback. Blackie, what do you call the old Lyman plier type tool that was made for reloading things like that, 45 long colt, etc.? Look like fencing pliers. Yes, originally they were called the loading tool, and Winchester sold them, Marlin sold them, and a couple other companies sold them that have a bullet mold in the front, and then they had a shell creator in the back, so you could reload shells for black powder. But it was called the reloading tool. Just look up antique 45 long colt reloading tool, Old West reloading tool, Winchester reloading tool. They were made by the Ideal company, now Lyman. Lyman's a renaming of the Ideal. The modern tool that had little dies that screwed in that came in the late 1800s and went up to almost modern times was the Lyman 310 tool. You don't have a bullet mold on it, but it was for reloading shells in the field. So the Lyman 310 tool might be what you're looking for. If not, you're going to have to get one of those that's one of the original sets. And those are very collectible and won't necessarily make a good bullet for modern times because some changes have been made to the bullets over the years. And if you get a reloading tool like that for 45 long colt, it probably will not work with a modern because we changed the rim on the 45 long colt. Why in the Old West, when they had the 4440 and everything, did they never put it into a rifle? It's because it didn't have a rim on it. It was so small you could barely hook it with your fingernail. When you look at original 45 Colts, they hardly got any rim on them because that center rod punched it out, right? So there's nothing for a shell extractor to grab, pull it in and out of a chamber in a rifle. In modern times, we went to having a base on it about the size of a 44 Magnum, so we've almost tripled the size of the rim on it. So if you get an original, say, 1895 Colt 45 reloading tool, it might not work with modern brass because it's too big to hook onto it because it's got a bigger rim on it. Yeah, see, veritable storehouse of useless information. Yes, Michigan Silverback. You can still go on to eBay. You can still go on to Amazon and just look up Lyman 310 tool. And I believe that they're still making the parts for it. So you can get them in modern times. Yeah, fleck tarn is now drying up. Dan. Good evening, Dan. Excuse me, Dan. Dwayne. I'm sorry. Glasses. My apologies. Yeah, Buckeye, weren't you telling me about you had found those? There's a place up there in Illinois or something that's making the USGI woodland camo ponchos for like 40 something bucks a piece, the original manufacturer. And I talked to one of y'all at one point, and you was telling me about that. That actual manufacturer is still up there, I think, Indiana, Illinois, something like that. Tony York, yes, the official name is 45 Colt, not to be confused with 45 Government, 45 S&W. They called it long Colt, and we know why they did, because it was that long civilian. You couldn't get it in the military. You were issued 45 government, which is 45 S&W, to go into the single actions. And when you go in the store, you'd say, give me the long Colt. Like at one time, so there's already a 38 long Colt. Remember the 38 long Colt? When they created the 357, what do you call it? It was going to be the 38 extra long Colt. And they said no, and that's when they went to 357. They just went to the bullet designation and said Magnum, because they didn't want to call it the extra long, because they're afraid people to try to put it into a 38 long Colt revolver. Names mean a lot, you know. Okay, brother. Sleep well. Good evening, Bear. Only OD and multicam. Cool. Well, even OD would be nice, you know, for the older guys. But in fact, you're going to see a video that I shot today. I went over the surplus thing. I'm going to be doing a video coming up, and we're going to be making a haversack. And I'm talking about recycling a old duffel bag and turning it into a haversack. And while I was over there, the lady said, do you know what these are? And she brought out, they found in a box a bunch of these ponchos. And at first glance, I thought it was a Vietnam era poncho. And then I got to looking at it, and it wasn't. It's bigger than a U.S. Army poncho. Whenever I take it, folded in half like you'd be wearing it, where your head's up here and you go shoulder. It's over 6 feet wide, like when you'd be wearing it sideways. You could easily set this thing up as a pup tent long way and have enough room to put a grown man in it. And on the hood, it's got these little triangular openings with looks like where a pole would go into it, and a grommet inside of it. And along one side on the inside, there's a series of snaps. There's no marking on them other than there's a laundry label in English sewed into a place on them that says how to wash in warm water, hand wash, do not tumble dry, do not iron. And I do, in part of the video, I show it and ask you guys, anybody know what kind of poncho this is? Because we don't know, but they found it at the surplus place, buried in some of that stuff. They moved one of them big 4-foot boxes, and it was in the bottom of another box that was full of something else. And they got 7, 8 of them. And looking at it, I would have thought it was a Vietnam poncho, but it's bigger than a U.S. poncho. So not sure what it is. Yes, Tennessee Smoky, the quick deployment ridgeline will work with the military spec poncho. Absolutely. It will hook to the grommets. Yeah, the 35-liter packs are dried up. True. Tony, correct. The 38 long Colt. Charles Martin, Blackie, for home defense with a 20-gauge shotgun, what would you prefer for ammo? Me? A load of number 6 turkey load. In a dwelling, maximum you're gonna have is 10 or 15 feet, because that's a big room across. So it's only gonna spread out about that big. And it will turn you into hamburger. You know, aim for the center of mass, pull trigger, instant hamburger. But at the same time, it won't penetrate walls well, and it will tear up the inner wall, but the outer wall will stop. And so you won't be able to shoot out of the apartment or shoot out of the house or the trailer and hit people next door. Like buckshot or slug may have the power to go outside. And therefore, you had a righteous self-defense moment here, but you hit somebody down the street. Now you got to defend against manslaughter. So I prefer turkey load, a 5 or a 6 for that, because you're just going to turn them into hamburger. And there's only going to be one side of the story, because according to the FBI, who keeps records of all the shootings across the United States and has since the 1930s, Of all handgun shootings, period, doesn't matter the reason, only 20% are fatal. Of rifle shootings, 43% are fatal. And of shotgun shootings using shot, 89% are fatal. Because it just turns you into a hamburger. Even if they grab you and throw you on a gurney and take you straight to the emergency room, all your internal organs are full of holes. So for home defense, it is the best home defense when you want one side of the story when you get done. So, and correct, John, it won't pass through the walls, but it will turn you to hamburger. Sanford Brown, you want to make one of my fishing kits for pack? Way to go! Fishing is just so relaxing to me, especially whenever you're out camping or whatever, and there's nice body of water. Even if you're not really expecting to catch a whole lot, if you're going to play catch and release, being able to just flip out there and fun waste of time, as my granddaddy said, it works. Okay, bang, bang, thank you. Okay, Paul, good. Whenever they pop up, like I say, I'll edit and post the video tonight, and it'll be going live tomorrow. Take a look at it, and if it is, comment on it if you're pretty sure, and I'll tell the lady down there it's Australian or Austrian. I believe it's Australian. And take a look at it. Tennessee Smoky. Cool. Got any questions? Feel free to ask. Simple Sojourner, correct. You can get several decent little compasses off of there. Especially like, what are you doing with the compass? For true navigation, yes, go one of the Suntoes or whatever. But if it's general direction, just keep me from walking in a circle, like I carry that little sun base plate compass and the pacing beads on it, I'm not out here doing navigation, but I've got turned around and I got to walk back out of here without walking in a circle. That will keep me sufficiently. And so you can have different layers of compasses. I've got Kamingas, I've got serious stuff where I'm going to be doing serious land nav, very difficult terrain. I bring that compass out. See, because we got to keep exactly on it. Because if you these hills and stuff and them swamps, once you start going, it all looks identical, So. Correct. 5-shot conversion kits because of the size of the rim trying to fit in the cylinder. So they make 5 shots instead of 6. Because when you go to 6, there ain't enough room and the rims stick out too far. You have to actually scale up the gun. And if you look at the 1872 open top or the Richards conversion, it's actually scaled up, I think about 5%. So if you hold a conversion cylinder up with an actual 1860 cylinder, it's actually a little bit bigger to make room for the modern 45 Colt. Because like I said, the original round didn't have those rims. And so this round does. And so they got to make the cylinder a little bit bigger and the gun overall a little bit bigger to fit. Terry, Blackie, we'll be able to pick up a park pass on the way in. You can do it right now. Go to do a search for Geneva State Forest, and it'll bring it up. And when it brings it up, and it'll tell you where it's at and all the stuff, there's a link there that says get permit here. You click on it, it takes you to the state, and you can go right now from home and say what day you're getting it. You don't have to do it for just today. I could right now go buy it and say I want it begin on the 7th and run through the 13th, and I can go ahead and pay for it. And then it prints out. If you're doing it on your phone, keep it on your phone. Or if you're doing it on a home computer, bring it up and take a good picture of it with all the information of the permit, and you can show that to the game warden. That's what I'm going to do, because I'm doing the yearly pass, because I go out there so much. So I'm going to do the yearly pass, and that way I can, if the game warden comes, I just bring up my phone and go, there it is. See, and that is acceptable. But you can do it right now before you ever come out there. You know, just it says what date do you want it to start and stop. It'll kill. Thank you very much. Tennessee Smoky. Yeah, a military spec poncho is a really good piece of gear. And usually if it tears up, you are in the stink. You know, I have used military issue ponchos through horrible weather before, you know, and if it rips, tears, or whatever, you are in hurricane force, because the military tested them to that kind of level. They wouldn't even buy them unless they could perform to that kind of level. That True Nord, I've heard of that. A jewel bearing instead of liquid fill. Cool. How do you line the barrel to get it down to size? You don't. You use 38 hollow base, so they bump up to fit. The ones that you buy that are conversion guns, they already come with a 3.57-inch barrel. You can't convert back to percussion with those barrels because it's too small. See, and a friend of mine found that out the hard way. He bought a 38 special conversion of a 51 Navy, and he thought, oh, I'll just drop in a percussion cylinder and change hammers, and you know, because it still had the loading lever and everything on it. He pulled the trigger, and it was he's lucky it didn't bust, and because it tried to ram that 375 ball down a 357 15,000 smaller bore, and he hadn't thought about that because of it. But when they originally did the conversion and created what we know today as a 38, the 38 long, and etc., they were using hollow base bullets to go into those old cap and balls, so they would open up and grip the rifling. You know, it was a very common technology at the time. Remember, Minay bullets that were used in the Civil War were hollow base for that very reason. You could load them easily, and they'd bump up to grab the rifling on the way out. Paladin, yes, you say daily, but then it asks you what date you want it for, so you can pick the day you're going to be there. And so when it goes at what is the date that you want this permit for, that's when you plug in the dates. Tony, I hear you. Yeah. Ain't it amazing how you can take all that DVD and put it onto something so much smaller, you know, and do it. I remember when we were converting from home movies were reel to reel, you know, and when we were converting over to VHS, and then that converted to DVD, and now it's converted over to drives and things. It's amazing. Mike Brown, Blackie, I'm looking for suggestions for a good frying pan for cooking brook trout over coals. That carbon steel pan by Pathfinder would be a good choice for that, because that it's case hardened, so it's non-stick, and on the side, you know, fish, very thin skin, easy to stick and burn. That'd be a good choice over coals, because it would heat evenly. It it's deep dish, so you're gonna have to be able to curve the fish in there. It's enough room. It'd be a good choice. Yeah, I'm very happy with mine. I've been using mine in the kitchen a lot, and the videos I've done. And yes, I still owe y'all some videos. I know it, but God, I've got behind on so many things. I got to just stop coming up with new topics and stick to what I've been talking about. But that's a really good choice. My wife likes it. She likes to make grilled cheese in it, and she likes it almost burnt. Where the smoke alarm's going off, it's about ready, and just wipe it out. So she's been very, very happy. And she's done said she wants another one for her to stay in the kitchen, so that whenever I go on trips and I'm taking my skillet with me, that she can have one in the kitchen. So that's going to be her love you present probably next month. So I'm going to get her one. Yeah, it'll kill. You've probably got to the point. Well, the potency of poison ivy varies year to year. It's an oil that is secreted from poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac, etc. And it chemically burns our skin. How potent is that acid? In some years, due to climatic conditions, it is stronger than other years. And so it may not be as much as you're getting, where what you got may be getting stronger too. Especially if you're pulling it out of the garden, you're kind of genetically engineering a stronger and stronger breed, because anything that can survive that and keeps coming back, you're forcing it to upgrade every time. So you're kind of upscaling it. James, thank you. The Lyman 110. I thought it was a 310. Okay. But Midway and Dixie Gun Works have got them. Yes, Marlboro. I have seen it. The hollow base fired into ballistic gelatin before and pulled out, and it does engage rifling. Tony, no, not very. That stucco and stuff, no. You can probably punch through it if you had to. So, remember, several years ago when Hurricane Michael hit Florida, there was a case of a stucco building that was part of a bank or something, that the manager had stayed at the bank, and the building went to collapsing, and one of the stucco walls had fallen down against the vault. They had opened the door of the vault where they could get into it like a shelter, and they got out by kicking their way through the stucco wall. They thought it was like solid concrete, because it's a bank, and it wasn't. It was stucco. It was basically cardboard with cement on it, and it had cracked. And they just went to kick him with their leg, and they kicked through it. And after that, it's a bank. It never dawned on that somebody could just walk up to the sidewall with the hammer and just knock a hole in the wall and come in. So, Lucky, how would you handle this? I paid for finals replaced in my CB, right? But went to different CB man, found out never been changed. Then I would contact that first dude and said, "Where's my money?" Bottom line, just contact him back. Say, "Look, you were supposed to replace this. I paid this. Here's the proof. You never swapped them. I need my money back." That's about the best you can do. Yeah, okay. Tony, let me share something with you. My good friend Grouch is very allergic to poison ivy, poison sumac, all of those. And when we were out in the woods together, what I found was the best preventative for him, especially when we were clearing land and he might inadvertently do it. What we do is we'd get a bar of soap and take an old army sock or just any kind of old sock, right, that you don't care about. Poke a hole in the top of it and put a clip where you can clip it to your belt. Put the bar of soap inside that sock. Have a canteen with you. If you think it just got on me, dump water on it. Pull up that sock, dump water on it, and lather up right now because it is a oil. It's got to absorb in the skin. And by that bar of soap inside of that sock, I can wash it right now and get it off of me. That's if you, I know I just got it off me. You can get it quick and keep it from burning you. 2, if you're going to be out there in it, what you want to do is next time you're in Walmart or something, go to the baby area. You're looking for where the diaper rash stuff is, and there's this stuff called Boudreaux's butt paste. That's the name of it. It's a yellow or red tube, okay? It's for diaper rash for babies, okay? I'm going to be out working around this stuff, bare-armed. It may get on me. Do like sunscreen. Put a dollop on you and smear it onto you. It will dry in place. It doesn't make you itch or nothing because it's made for baby skin, right? But it acts as a barrier for that oil to get on your skin. And this doesn't make you Superman, but an inadvertent whatever, that acid doesn't go through that Boudreaux's very well. And Grouch, if he puts it on, he's not going to get poison ivy, poison oak on him. You know, he don't want to hug a big bucket of it, but if you pick up something, one falls across your arm, it's not going to react with him. Otherwise, he'll have welts in an hour. So Boudreaux's butt paste. If you're allergic to poison ivy, poison oak, or whatever, I recommend that as a coating on your arms or your hands or whatever when you know you're going to be around it. And it doesn't look crazy. It just looks like you're wearing sunscreen or something. You know, not bright pink or something. Does 449 shave balls actually grip the rifling grooves? Yes. And 451 Navy, whenever you, or 451 cap balls, whenever you ram it, it's a 449 when it goes inside the tube. When it fires, it will kind of smear out because the pressure of the gas is behind it. Think like you squeeze a marshmallow, and that will engage the rifling and go just fine. And but it's 449 when it comes out the bore. So. Eric, cool. 4570 black powder cartridge load. Yeah, they're a lot of fun. And they'll take anything you want to take in North America. So. Hike with Mike. Good evening. Ken Aldridge, glad to help. Zombie Nation, good evening. Yes, tea tree oil soap works very good for things like that. Mike, talking about the ticks love you, as I mentioned earlier. If you start taking B12, you know, ticks are out, start taking B12 vitamin. It changes the pH of your blood. You know, don't go overboard and take a whole bottle. But like, for example, my wife, who's somebody that can just attract, you know, mosquitoes, gnats, ticks, anything like that, because she's perfect pH. We're going to be going out this coming weekend. Okay. On Monday, she'll start taking 2 of them a day, 1 in the morning, 1 at the night. By Friday, you don't smell or taste anything different with you. By Friday, she's a lot less attractive to mosquitoes and stuff. Don't mean zero, but a lot less. Same thing for ticks and whatever. Her blood pH is off, and so you're kind of bitter then to blood-borne parasites and insects that want to feed on blood, you're kind of bitter to them. And so it'll help, keeps them where they don't want to mess with you. Hey, Steve Kingsbury, you made it, brother. When are you going to be at camp? I'm planning on being out there absolutely, definitely Monday the 7th around lunch. I may be in and out before that. I know a couple people are going to be coming in like that weekend before. So when are you going to be coming, and are you bringing your kayak? I haven't tried any of those homeopathic poison ivy pills. Don't know how they'd work. They could, but I know that poison ivy and all of those is A, an allergic reaction, and B, is a chemical burn because it actually absorbs in our skin and we react to it. So, Charles Martin, yeah, people who find mushrooms. I don't mess with mushrooms. You hear too many times of some big time expert getting really, really sick. I mean, the guy like in England, Ray Mears. Ray Mears. He's had a guy on several of the shows, this very quiet guy with big old glasses who's a professor of early foods and stuff, paleo, Europe, and etc. And as part of his college where he teaches and all, they do a thing with mushrooms, teaching somebody, some botanical or whatever, the difference between poisonous and non-poisonous versions of this thing. And he always eats the non-poisonous one. They bring them to him, and he eats them. They screwed up one time. And he said he had eaten it. He didn't feel any ill effects. And then like an hour after he ate it, suddenly he lost all the color spectrum, and the only color he saw was blue. It's like the world was gray except for the color blue. And he realized he had poisoned himself. He had ate the actual poisonous mushroom. And so he got a Sharpie and wrote on his arm what he had done because he figured he was going to pass out, and had him call an ambulance to come get him. This guy's a major professor that knows this stuff inside and out, and he screwed up. So I really don't mess with that type of stuff. When I was learning wild edibles down here in my South for survival, my number one rule was I do not want to learn any wild edible that has any poison look-alike, even close. If there is no doubt that this is a such and such, like cattail, if nothing else looks like it, this has got to be cattail, then I want to learn it as an edible and etc. If this is good, but at certain times of the year you can't eat it, nope, I don't even want to know it. I want stuff I'm tripping over, and I want stuff that there is no poisonous look-alike. So when I pick it up, I know what I'm doing. Because I'm already in a bad situation if I'm down to eating weeds. Life has got really tough real quick. Tennessee Smoky, any experience with the Rothko military reproduction gear? Yes, some of it can be really good. Some of it is the field jackets seem to be pretty good. And Bear recently got a bunch of field jackets for Christmas. He gave all of his sons a field jacket for Christmas, and he got him one. And I looked at his in depth, and it seemed to be really good. Sunday afternoon or Monday? Cool. I'm going to try to bring my canoe, and we're going to try to be able to go and kayak and fish a little bit. We're going to see. Yeah, John Lattermack. I don't mind if it runs larger than normal. I really mind when it runs smaller than normal. So, because remember, you're going to be putting a field jacket on over clothes. You're not getting in it butt naked. So a little bit larger means I can put more layers underneath when it's cold. Yeah, exactly. Tim Pierce. Wild onion. It better smell like an onion. It can look like an onion, but if it don't smell like an onion, that's the thing. And wild onions have a much stronger smell than a lot of our domestic onions, to be honest. We were in Mississippi at a living history event, and of course, it's a big cow pasture, and there's eight or 9,000 of us at this big, huge camp out. And I happened to look down. We were standing at a place, and they were just obviously somebody had fed cows onions. And this is where the cow patty had flopped. Now it's long gone, but it had seeded. And so you had all these brand new young onion sprouts sticking out 5-6 inches over an area about like that big. And I was telling somebody, I said, that's what? And I pulled it up, I broke it in half, and wow, yeah, that's onion. That's a wild onion. And so he collected a big old hat full of them things. Made fantastic soup. But if it don't smell like an onion, don't even think about it. Gordon Hillman, thank you very much. Archaeobiologist. He's dead. Sorry to hear that. He was an interesting fellow. Quintessential British nobility type professor. I mean, that was him. Stephen, hello to Talladega National. Hope you're having a good night. Mike Fritz, good evening. Cool. Woo, almost ate nightshade. That'd be bad. You know, the funny thing is, both the potato and the tomato are in the nightshade family. The only part of that plant we eat is the tomato and potato. The rest of the plant is poisonous. If you eat a tomato's leaves, it's nightshade. It can kill you. You go into kidney failure pretty quickly. Yeah, Michigan silverback. Several times, like in Sportsman's Guide, when they're selling the M65s by Rothko, they come with a liner, which I think is a real asset. John Loudermilk. Blackie, why did Grouch get mad at the guy with the onions? I'd forgotten. That very guy that I talked about, that I showed him the onions, he was a camp buddy of ours named Squire. Well, he picked up like a basketball sized pile of these onions and went back over to his friend Grouch's camp. And Grouch was laying down taking a nap, and he just sat down in the chair by his fire. That's where his chair was. And he went to cutting the onions. And so he cut the tops off, and he cut most of the green off, and he made a thing. Well, he took all the tops and stuff, and Grouch had this big old bed of coals right there from his fire, which he'd cooked lunch. That's the reason it'd been a big bed of coals. He had seared and done stuff. He had ate, now he's taking a nap. Well, it was a nice big bed of coals. That fire had been going for 4 days. So the bed of coals were like this. And Squire, not thinking, he dumped the leftover tops and pieces and parts of the onions into the fire, and he walked off. Well, it hit them hot coals, and it instantly went to burning. And the wind is going, and this cloud came up. It might as well have been military CS gas. That cloud was staying fairly low to the ground, going like 5, 6, 7 foot high, and went going across camp about 10 miles an hour in that breeze. And people were gagging and puking and snot running, and just like you'd done CS gas. And everybody looks up and sees Grouch's camp and the smoke boiling out of it. And they come running up, wake him up, and are just chewing him out. And he had no idea what it was. You know, he was asleep. And Squire's just walking away going, do, 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 you know. Oh, yeah, he gassed out half the camp with that. Blackie, have you heard about those hammerhead worms? A friend of mine found one in Atlanta. I have heard about them, and I understand you're supposed to kill them if you find them. They say don't cut them in half because they can reproduce that way and grow back. So burn them, smash them, do something, but make sure it is dead, graveyard dead. It's an invasive type thing. Apparently, I may be wrong, but I've heard don't handle them. They're kind of toxic to handle, so don't pick them up. Just smash the snot out of them. Anon, I don't know if the Indians preferred long houses or buried earthen houses or adobe. Yes, depending on the environment. In upper New England, long houses were preferred, and they put a fire in the center of it, and the heat would radiate up and out. And they didn't have doors. They had hides hanging there like we think like a blanket. So you opened and came in, and a long house orientated east to west meant that the north wind never blew in the door. And so the very top center, the heat would go up and go to the ends, and they had a raised tip to let the heat go out. So it was very smoky, but it was very warm in the cold, wet winters of upper New England. See, adobe out west, because you didn't have wood to build with. Wood was at a premium of any size. Everything's bushes. See, so you had to go hunt tree trunks to make the frame, and then you made adobe rock walls, adobe brick walls and things, because that's all you had was dirt. There's very little wood available to make a construction out of that. And so it just depends on where you were is what they were looking for. In buried earthen houses and extreme heat areas, the buried earthen house was superior because it's always cooler underground than it is on the surface. So just where you're at. Blackie, how much trouble do you think someone would get into if they were to take some tartan and brushed it on a bunch of vines down at the river on a public fishing area? Can be a great deal depending on where you're at. Okay. I am very aware of a story of a young man who was sentenced to 35 years for growing pot in a national forest. It wasn't the pot. It wasn't drug. He introduced a non-native species into a forest, state forest. He then put fertilizer onto it, not authorized. He then used weed killer, and those three is what got it since 35 years. So you can get in real trouble depending on where it's at and who wants to throw the book at you and why. So, yes, that's correct. Jeff Squire is one that ate all the sausage during the Living History camp out. Correct. Richard Hayes, thank you very much. Tony, have a good night. Thanks for coming in. Yeah, in New Mexico, adobe would be the way to go because it is a good insulator and you don't have a lot of rain. You do have rain, but not like we have down here in the South where adobe would erode. It's easy to repair, but it does erode well when you got driving rain that lasts for days and days. It would erode. So in the desert, adobe is very usable. Even today, I don't know why we don't build more with it. Sticks and straw, wattle and daub. Tendrodoxin, cool. Dustin, I hope you like it. Those are good knives. The one and only Nicole, good evening. Yeah, y'all know just to show up. YouTube ain't going to spread the word, I guess. Yeah, Jeff, I carry a Fieldmaster, but the Huntsman's also a very good choice too. What, tell me, concrete and hemp, that would work, but concrete and pine straw does good too. Or hay. Gerald Martin, good night. Be safe. Sleep well. Yeah, mesquite out there. Yeah, that bushy. That's what they've got for wood. That's when you always hear about mesquite wood for fires and etc. And the Indians would go long distance, hundreds of miles sometimes, to go cut lodgepole pines, which were long and straight and light enough and small enough diameter to make teepees poles. I mean, they used them until they drug short, so to speak, rotted off at the base until they had to go get another one because wood was just in such short supply out there. And whenever the first pioneers got out in Kansas and places like that, and you hear about sod houses, because there just wasn't enough trees. What did you burn for firewood? You had to burn cow patties and buffalo chips because there just wasn't any other wood of any amount. It was just grass for as far as the eye could see. So you build what you got. Europe never had log cabins. Log cabins is an American invention because when they got over here, it was wattle and daub. You'd make a frame, you put big poles down, and then between here, you'd put smaller poles, and then you would weave in between them even smaller poles, and then you take straw and mud and pack on either side, wattle and daub. And you pack it between that frame, and then you made an overhanging roof so the water didn't stay on the wall. And that was the early construction of the 1700s. But then when they started moving inland, wattle and daub didn't protect you from Indians. And that's when you started seeing the log house where them walls were that thick, you know. And we've all seen the westerns of them burning out. Go look at original log cabins from the 1700s, like the one that's there in Tennessee that was Davy Crockett's last cabin in Tennessee. The floor, the bottom floor is so big, and then you go up and the second story is actually bigger and overhangs where there's peepholes. So you can look out from the top through like a half-inch hole and see somebody on the outside down there. See? And they had firing holes in the chinking. They could open up and fire out. It's a fort. And, well, yeah, but burn it. You ever tried to set fire to an 18-inch diameter log? You got to pile a lot of brush up to get that going. And so it was kind of flame resistant. You know, in the Western, you see them shooting a flaming arrow and poof, the whole thing starts going up. That was kind of rare. And if you're shooting outward, the bad guys can't haul up big piles of debris to get a bale of hay going, so to speak, to get your cabin to catch fire. And a burning arrow is not going to set a 18-inch diameter log on fire. And so it was kind of fire resistant. But that's what they were building. That's what they were facing at the time. So the American log cabin, that was in fact Duke of Lancaster, I believe, who had came to America as a young man trying to make his fortune in the right after the War of 1812. And he went around becoming a land speculator in what is today like Missouri and stuff like that. And when he went back to England, he had them build a log cabin like he had lived in America, sort of a nostalgia thing. And it was such a tourist attraction in the UK, England back in them days, to come see an American style house made out of logs. It was just unthinkable. Because in England, big trees were protected to be for ships. And so you didn't build out of big logs. That's one of the reasons, you know, he was rich enough he could afford logs. You know, different places, different stuff. Tim Pierce, is there a way to op Alabama without going through Atlanta? Tim, where are you at to begin with? And I'll tell you, yes, there is a way you can avoid Atlanta. It just depends on where you're coming from. Oh, coming from Eastern North Carolina. Yeah, but it's going to be a back way. I'm here to tell you. Okay. When you're on 85 coming in, before you get to Atlanta, punch in Macon, Georgia, and it's going to deter you down. And it wants you to go through Atlanta, but there is a more direct route from coming that way, and it will run you down. Go to Macon. Once you get to Macon, punch in Columbus, Georgia. It's going to bring you over to Columbus. When you get to Columbus, Georgia, punch in Montgomery, and that will bring you across Montgomery. Punch in Opp, and it will take you down 331 to Opp, Alabama, and then follow my directions right in. It's a backdoor way, but you can do it. You know, Georgia, everything goes through Atlanta, and you either got to run high and go over Atlanta or run low and go by Macon and run across. Either one. But if you really want to avoid Atlanta, when you're probably about an hour out of Atlanta, punch in Macon, come down to Macon, and then punch in Columbus, and it'll bring you back over, and you'll hit Interstate 85 and run on in. In fact, if you get to, you go past Columbus on 80, and you go to Opelika, and you pick up 85 and run straight into Montgomery then. So. Yes, Ken Albert, the Great Plains were called the Great American Desert because there was nothing there. They didn't see resources, especially them coming out of Europe, and they're coming across the eastern U.S., all the trees, and suddenly you break out on this grassland, and it's like, what is this? They didn't see any resources. You know, we think desert like desert, but to them, they were really, when they were talking about desert, they meant it is desert of resources. We say desert, meaning, you know, sand. But when they said desert, they meant it was desperate, destitute, without. So the great American, you know, desert. There's nothing out there. Correct. Wet red cedars and stuff like that. Well, that was the thing when they were heading west, when they finally got into the Snake River and all, and could get to resources then. And the direction heading west back in the days was, when you left St. Louis, it was head due west until you see the Rocky Mountains. Well, that was over a month of travel. When you see the Rockies, turn north till you hit the Flat River. I think it was the Flat of the Snake. Follow it up until you see the falls. Then head that, and that was the path to the Rockies back in those days. And when they got to the river, there were stuff growing along the edge of the river, so they had wood sources again. But that, leaving St. Louis and getting to there wasn't nothing but grass. So, Donald, get in. Good evening. Sir Malcolm, good evening. Yes, it'll kill. Blackie, any idea how effective the temperature was on some of the old houses and manage under it? Yes. It's gone now, but there was a place in Georgia that was called not Newville, not Westville, and they had brought like 300 antique buildings from all over the southeast down there. So the youngest the youngest building was 1857. So everything in that park was before 1857. Okay, they were cabins, they were dog trot buildings, there were a lot of them, and often the walls were like 18, 20 inches thick, where they had felled huge trees and squared them up to make logs, even if it was going to be not a log cabin, but a house, you know, thick walls. And the gap in the floor between the floorboards was probably about the thickness of a 16 penny nail. Well, with those big old shake roofs and everything, the heat of the sun coming down onto the building would heat up and heat rises. They had 12-foot ceilings in them. The heat would rise up. As it did, it pulled cool air from underneath the house up. So I can remember going to Westville with my first wife. We were going up there on a tour. And it was August, and it was easily 110 was heat index. And when we walked into a cabin, it felt like there was air conditioning going on in there. And it wasn't. It was just that cool air. So it'd be up to 20 degrees cooler inside than it was outside. Well, when it feels like it's 110 outside and you walk in and it feels like it's 90, it feels like it's in air conditioning. And it's that draft. And so they could be very efficient. They knew what they were doing back then. You know, they were, if you ever get a chance, the only place I can point to right now off the top of my head is in Troy, Alabama, is the Pioneer Museum. And they've got a bunch of old original cabins from early Alabama, early 1800s in there, like the dog trot and stuff like. They just moved them in mass up there as a static display. Go up there and look at them. Many of them's got tin roofs where it was tinned over in the 1900s. Originally, it had been a shake roof, and it's amazing how comfortable they can be in the summer. So it's just a place until you walk into a real one, you won't see the value of it. Jim Stewart, exactly. They had buffalo chips. Got to have something to burn. Canned hamburger, Sir Malcolm, canned hamburger is very useful and works very well. If you will can some of them and add dry onion soup mix to it whenever you brown it, you can have flavored hamburger meats for later on for adding into soups, stews, stocks, taking them out, squeezing them together with something to bind them together. I have had browned hamburger meat that they use butter and fine cornmeal and made a patty out of it like you would make salmon cakes, and turned it back into something like a burger from old family members years ago. Ned Flanders, exactly. What my granddaddy taught me about bears, he said 99 out of 100 will run from you, but they don't come in that order. So don't be counting. The one and only Nicole, isn't the 1900s of Alabama, was Alabama now? Yes. Alabama was founded in 1819 after the Creek Indian War. And it has had a little bit of an adjustment here or there through the 1800s. But it's the same area, but it's a radically different change in architecture. Because in 1800, it was still, there was no Alabama. This was the Creek Indian Nation. See? And then you had the houses of the people that came in, the pioneers of the 1820s and 30s when it became a state. Then you had the Civil War time period. That got completely turned upside down after the Civil War and Reconstruction. And a lot of construction techniques and stuff had to be lost. People were poor, etc. Reconstruction ran from the end of the Civil War up till the 1930s. And it limited a lot of stuff that could be done in the South, what materials were available, and etc. And so by, like, the house I grew up in was built in 1903 from an earlier building that they had torn down to recycle the lumber. So my house was physically built in 1903, but the lumber in it was from the 1820s. See? And so the construction design was of a 1920 shotgun house, but the materials that were used were fat lighter boards from the early 1800s. They'd been sawed in a sawmill. You know, you could see the saw marks on the walls in it. And there was a change in the architecture of, we went from hearths to a fireplace, which is much smaller, to a coal fireplace, which is really shallow. That fireplace is only about that deep, about that high, and it was for a coal brazier to sit there, not a wood fireplace. It was a coal fireplace. And my house had been converted when they had tore down the other building and recycled the bricks. They came in, and what had been a hearth, which was like 3.5 foot deep by 4 foot wide, got turned into a 20-inch deep by 30-inch wide little bitty thing for a coal brazier to sit there and a little bitty flue going out. I mean, changes in architecture. And when you start going around and looking, and so you'll see these, there's still houses being lived in today that were built in the early 1800s down here that people are still living in, but they've been adapted over the years. And a friend of mine bought a place, and the realty company really didn't want to show it to her. It was kind of back down in this bottom down here, was growed up around it. And it was this 3-story house, which had been a plantation house in the 1800s and had been moved to this current location about 1901, 1902. Well, now it's in the edge of the city. Back then, this was in the country. And they'd moved it into this low place because there was a creek in the backyard and they wanted water, right? Well, in the 1960s, people had gone in there. It had been hippies. They had painted it. So you had all these psychedelic colors and rainbows and all kinds of stuff all over the walls. And when she came in and looked at the place, and the realtor really didn't want to show it to her. It had been closed up 40 years, you know, and so we think it's rotten or whatever. She got in it. It wasn't rotten. You know, she called me up and asked me, would I come over and look at it? And I said, yeah, and I went into it. And I stomped as hard as I could on the floor. And you might as well have been stomping concrete. We found out they were 12-inch thick walnut. 12 by 18 walnut. The whole floor of the house. The archways, which had originally been very beautiful gabled entrances and things, had been painted over. So we sandblasted and got all the paint off the walls, and it's this beautiful hardwood. You know, its construction techniques changed, but the little staircase going upstairs was only about that wide. You know, you wasn't too big in them days to go up and down them staircases. But houses changed, materials changed. You've seen a lot of houses that only had 1 or 2 windows. That's because when you paid property tax, how many closets do you have? How many windows do you have? How many doors do you have? That's how they paid taxes. So you had houses that didn't have closets. The house I grew up in didn't have a closet. You had a square room with the shift robe sitting there because a closet cost extra. Different things change. Woo, we've gone over 2 hours. Chris Evans, whenever I inherited that house that I grew up in, and when I was trying to upgrade it a little bit, I put the first hot water heater in there whenever I was in high school. The house had only 1 space heater in the whole house. Other than the stove in the kitchen, that was the only source of heat in that whole house. When the wind blew, you'd see the calendar move on the wall. That's how drafty that old house was. And I, in high school, bought the first hot water heater and put it in the house. We only had cold water. So whenever you wanted to take a bath, you had to heat a pot up on the stove. You know, that was a house I grew up in the 1960s and 70s. So they can show you how things have changed. But when we went to tear the chimney out, remember I told you they recycled everything, including the chimney. A buddy of mine, he did restoration up in Virginia of a lot of those brick buildings, and you can't replace one of these historic brick buildings where brick gets broke. You can't replace it with a modern brick. It has to be replaced by a period correct brick. And here I had right at 1,000. I think it was 920, 935, something like that. Period correct bricks from the 1800s. And I sold each one of those bricks for $3 a piece. You know, and he took all of them because he was using them in his business to repair those buildings up there, you know. And so you never know what's going to be valuable. Well, guys, that's 2 hours and 15 minutes. That's the longest we've gone in a long time. But I think we're going to call it quits. Yes, I will be back on next Thursday night, and then I will be gone the next Thursday because I'll be at my gathering. Again, for those of you that just tuning in, my gathering will be at Geneva State Forest in Lower Alabama, starting officially on April the 7th and going through the 13th. Yes, we will be camping on site. If you would like to camp, you're welcome. Come on. The only cost is you have to pay $5 per day to the state to use the site. That's it. You can get an annual permit and things like that if you want to do that way. But everybody's paying, I'm paying. You know, same thing. There will be porta potties on site. We do not have water on site other than the lake. So bring your own water or bring something to filter water with, like a pump or a grail or something like that. I'll provide some firewood, and there are trash cans on site. There are 2 state maintained porta potties sitting there for our other biological needs. And we're at close location. We're in 20 minutes. You can be to a major grocery store, or about 25 minutes. You can be to a Walmart. So we got supplies around there. Guys, hope to see you there. Hope y'all have a great night. Have a great weekend. And I'll see y'all next week. Till then, God bless. Take care.